First of all, this is very exciting. After having been giving lectures in the last year through Zoom, this is very exciting to be in front of humans. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about trust, Bitcoin, blockchain, and the future of finance. And we're going to be seeing how finance is dealing with finding new ways to create trust, and if we can copy or learn something from these new technologies and try to implement them on other directions. A little bit about myself. I'm a veteran in the fields of finance and technology with it's embarrassing, over 20 years of experience in these fields. I've been combining the two before they were named Fintech. And I was running one of the biggest security trading websites in Israel. I was the business development manager there and the product manager there. After that, I became the COO of a blockchain company that raised $153 million in a crowd sale. I've been COO of other companies outside of Israel. And originally, actually, I was a programmer in the dot-com era, and I later became an investment consultant through the Israel Security Authority. During 2020, I was chosen as one of the 100 most inspirational women in blockchain in the world. And what I do is I advise regulators, banks, enterprises, and startups about anything that has to do with moving ahead with the technologies that have to do in the worlds of finance, including blockchain and Bitcoin and digital currencies, but not only them. So one of the interesting, I'd say, technologies that can kind of give us an example of how trust can be built without having a centralized entity is actually blockchain. And for those who don't know, blockchain is the underlying technology for the creation of many digital currencies, including Bitcoin itself. Now the beginning, if I start and say when was the beginning, when the idea came that maybe we need another solution that's different from the existing solutions that we have right now in the world, it came right after the subprime crisis. A lot of bankers were let off, and instead of sitting and being sad about that, they said, wait, we know the banking system from the inside, we know the financial system, and it has its flaws. Why don't we try to recreate something that's better, that can create more trust? Because a lot of the trust was breached in that crisis. And we see around us a lot of the inventions. There are a lot of startups and a lot of companies that started at that time. But two of these inventions have to do a lot with trust and creating a new way to create trust. And that's blockchain and Bitcoin, okay? And we can see them as two separate products, okay? And each one of them has a life of its own, and they don't have to go together. So today we're going to be understanding what blockchain is. I promise you I'm going to do it in less than 60 seconds, okay? And that's going to be a challenge. And if somebody doesn't understand after that, please tell me, and I'll give another 60 seconds to try it again, okay? And we're going to be seeing a few examples of digital currencies and where things can go, and then I'm going to try to combine the two together and see what we can learn about trust in regards to these technologies and how we can implement them in different directions. And I'm going to have to do it in less than 18 minutes because that's what Vlad told me to do. Blockchain. One of the issues humanity has been dealing with in regards to trust is how to solve a problem that has been around forever. Let's say if two people want to transact and share something and and trade it. Let's say I'm selling somebody a car and that person is giving me money. What prevents any of us to come at some point in the future and say, wait, that car actually belongs to me, or that money was not transferred? Okay? That's an issue because, not everybody is telling the truth, right? And there are different perspectives. And what was the solution that humanity found for this problem? Who knows? It's an open stage. No, this is peer-to-peer. I'm talking about 5,000 years ago, 200 years ago, before technology. How was this problem solved? If you are now selling your house and somebody else is buying it, who keeps track? What? Signing a contract. Where is that contract kept? Where is this information kept? In authorities, okay? In a centralized entity. Humans solved this problem by creating a middleman, okay? And this middleman, his job is to keep track, right? And he needs to write down every transaction that happens, right? And to keep track who owns what, right? What kind of third-party centralized entities do we know? banks, right? They keep track of who owns what kind of money and how much, right? What else? What other kinds of centralized entities do we know? Stock exchanges. What else? Not only in finance. Sorry? Governments. Okay, what kind of things do they keep track of? Ownership, right? Of cars, right? Every government has its own list of who owns which car. Property, right? Okay? And this solution has been going on for centuries and centuries and centuries. And it's working. You know, we can keep track, each one of us knows who the house they live in belongs to. But are there anomalies? Could something go wrong? Okay, and what are these anomalies when using a third-party person? What could happen? What could possibly go wrong? What happens when there are misunderstandings? What else could go wrong when there's a third party? Sorry? Corruption. What if this third party isn't fair? What if it favors one side and not the other? That's a problem, okay? What else could go wrong? What happens if these files are corrupted in some way? Do you guys know that when the Twin Towers went down, the insurance companies compensated for the chairs, for the computers, but a lot of data was lost, okay? Who needs to take care of that data? What happens when it disappears, right? What happens when a central bank, or a central entity, a third-party entity like a bank or like a government keeping files, what happens when that is breached and what that is ruined? Okay, that could happen. What else? What else could go wrong with the third party? What happens if somebody maliciously comes back and changes the records? Okay, and cheats. Okay, so these problems have been around, okay, and humanity has been dealing with them, but there was not another solution until blockchain came. Okay, and when blockchain came, it came on the footsteps of a revolution, because you know all of us are now holding computers in their hands. Do you know that the phones that you are holding are stronger than the first IBM that sent a spaceship to the moon? The computational power that humanity now has enables us to create solutions that we couldn't even think about even 10 years or 20 years ago. Okay? And that's exactly where blockchain comes in. And I'm going to explain to you, and this is the 1 minute, of what blockchain is. Imagine that all of us together, instead of deciding to use a third party to keep track of the transactions that we're doing, what if all of us here decided to cooperate? And how would we cooperate? Each one of us would take out a piece of paper and start writing all of the transactions that happen within our group. That means that, let's say, if I give 1,000 euros to Vlad, everybody's going to be writing, Meirav is giving 1,000 euros to Vlad, okay? And then the next row will be, Vlad gave 500 euros to somebody else. And we're going to continue to write. All of us are going to be doing this simultaneously. At some point, assuming that we have the same size of paper with the same amount of rows, what's going to happen to our papers? They're going to finish, right? At that moment, we can all do something to create trust. We can all do a calculation that we decided upon together. Let's say the amount of transactions multiplied by the amount of people divided by the amount of money. It doesn't really matter what that equation is. But we all do that calculation and we pick up our answers. And assuming that all of us got it correct and nobody is cheating, what are we all going to be getting? The same result. And at that moment, each one of us can take that paper, put it back in our file cabinet, and take out another piece of paper. Okay? Now let's look again at the problems with creating trust with a third party, and let's see if we found a better solution. Okay? What happens if one of us cheats? We know that the calculation is going to be different, right? What happens if one of our databases is breached and ruined? We still have another 100 copies, correct? What happened if one of us, and we didn't even say this, what happened if the third party, remember the third party problems? What if the third party starts becoming lax and saying, I just work 4 hours a day and pay me a lot of money to do my job, right? That can't happen with this solution, right? Because each one of us owns that data. It's not centralized with one person. And therefore, because we know that all the databases are the same, what have we created? Trust. Okay? And if one of us makes a mistake once or twice or 3 times, what can we say? Thank you, but I think we're not on the same page. You can leave, it's okay. We have another 99 people here to do the same calculation with us. Okay? Therefore, we've actually created a system that enables having trust without using one centralized entity. Okay? And notice that the more people that you have in this group, and the more diverse this group is, what do you have? More trust, right? It's not people with the same interest. Now, it's very interesting because you can use this kind of technology not only in finance, you can use it in a lot of different areas. You can use it for supply management. Okay? Now, this is a very interesting case because if we're looking at implementing this kind of solution for supplies that are moved from one hand to the other, let's say somebody that creates products, and then somebody that transports the products, and somebody that sells the products, and somebody that holds the products in a garage. Okay? They have different interests, right? And the more of these that I have, the better the system that we can create together, right? Because we're looking at different perspectives of what is the truth, because each of these people in the supply chain management has their own piece of truth or their own segment of the truth that they are seeing. So the system would actually work better if we can reach a consensus like what we saw right now with the signing of people with various different points of views and diversity. And they're all together using this system in order to create something that all of us with our different points of views can trust. But that's just one side of the equation. Who understands blockchain? 1, 2, what? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8? Who doesn't understand blockchain yet? I need to explain it. Do I need to explain it better? Do we understand? Just to summarize, blockchain is the idea to have multiple databases that are not held by one centralized entity, but rather by many different entities around the world. Okay? That's what the idea of blockchain is, if I have to sum it up in one sentence. But let's look at Bitcoin itself, okay? And I'll remind you that Bitcoin is just a use case. It was the first digital currency that came out using this technology. Since then, there have been over 10,000 different currencies that humanity has been trying to play with and try to create different kinds of solutions with digital currencies. But let's look at Bitcoin as an example. And that kind of like makes us look back and ask ourselves a question. What is money? Who knows what money is? Sorry? Value. Okay, value. What else? What is the definition in Google or in Wikipedia? What is money actually? Money is actually a tool for human collaboration. Okay, and let's remind ourselves, before money was created, how did humans collaborate in regards to transferring goods from one to the other? What did they do? They bartered. Okay, and where did they do this bartering? In markets, right? People would come, depends on different areas in the world, on a certain day at a certain time, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, they would bring their goods with them and they would start bartering. I'll give you 2 tomatoes, give me 3 cucumbers. Let's go together to the sheep person and see how many sheep we can get from that. Okay? Now this is not really efficient. So the tool that was created in order to make things more efficient was money. Okay? Because with money, you don't have to bring your goods with you. You can do these transactions without being at the same place at the same time. Correct? What were the first kinds of money in the world? It was natural resources. In some areas, it was seashells. In other areas, it was gold. In other areas, it was oil or salt. Okay? We all know that Salzburg is called that way because of the salt. Okay? Salt was given as a means of currency in the Roman times. Okay? What's the common denominator, or what's in common to all of these natural resources that were used as money? They're what? Exactly. There's not a lot of it. You need to work or mine them in order to create them, because you couldn't just use a leaf as a currency, because then the value wouldn't be there. It's something that needs to be scarce, and it's something that you need to work in order to create. Fast forward a few years forward, and we've all been born to a paradigm. This is not a law of nature, but a paradigm that who creates money? Who creates money today? governments and countries. Has it always been this way? No. Okay, this is something new in historical looking. It's just a few hundred years, maybe thousands of years. Before that, that wasn't the way it worked. So actually, when we fast forward in time and we look at Bitcoin, we can actually see it as, I'd say, a social experiment with a question behind it. Can we create a system of value, a new kind of money, that is not created by governments, but that it still holds the trust that we have in government-created currencies? Okay? And when you look at Bitcoin with that kind of prism, from that kind of point of view, you can look at it in different ways, because a lot has been said about Bitcoin. There are people that say, oh my God, it's a horrible, horrible thing. Okay, and it's taking away power. And then other people look at it, oh my God, look, it's such a wonderful thing. Okay? But when you look at it as a social experiment to check, can we create trust without using governments or a centralized entity, it takes on a new kind of point of view. Now this experiment is still continuing, right? The price of Bitcoin goes up and goes down according to different behaviors of different governments. When China says it's going to be closing down the Bitcoin mines, the price goes down. And then when Elon Musk or other Jack Dorsey say something good about Bitcoin, whoop, the price goes up. So it is kind of not exactly stable enough to be used as a currency to go and do shopping with. But as a social experiment, for the last, how much is this, 11, 12 years, this social experiment is still going. People still believe and still trust a virtual coin that does not exist, and there is nothing backing it. No governments and no material goods. Which actually makes sense, because if we think about all the other currencies, including euro or dollars or yens or yuans, there is nothing behind them anyway, right? Gold used to back the dollars, but that stopped at around the 1960s and 70s in the Nixon time. So actually all of the currencies that we're so used to trusting actually do not have anything behind them except the trust itself. And that applies to virtual currencies as well. So while this experiment is happening, towers have been built on top of this first token. Like I said, 10,000 different digital currencies have emerged. 95% of them that were around in 2017 and 2018 lost 95% of their value. They didn't have something behind them that enabled the trust in the same amount that we'd expect. Some of them are still around. You still have very big currencies, Ethereum, Ripple. You have new kinds of co-tokens that are coming up all the time. Right now there are around 4,000 currencies, digital currencies, that are being traded on stock exchanges, digital stock exchanges for digital currencies. Other types of technologies were built on top of this. NFTs, non-fungible tokens, which are specific kinds of tokens that represent one piece of something that's different from all the rest. We don't have time, Vlad, to go into this. This is a different lecture, but you can see that there are new structures being built, and one of them is smart contracts, okay? And I want to explain smart contracts so each of you understands, because it's important in creating trust. When I transfer a digital currency from one person to the other, what am I actually transferring physically? I'm transferring a computer code, okay? A computer code says that the money or the currency that I am transferring has been moved from one wallet to another wallet. But while this information is moving, why do I only need to transfer one piece of information? Why can I not transfer more information during that transaction? For example, a piece of code. Okay? What if I transfer at that same time a computer program that has a set of rules? A contract, for that matter. And that contract could be as simple as saying, if the product reaches the destination, then the money can be used and transferred to the person that I transferred it to. But if the product that I bought has not reached me by mail, then this money disappears or comes back to the sender. This can all be programmed and be sent with a digital currency. So now we understand that the money that has been created, I have 1 minute? Oh my God. Okay, panic. That means that we can send, other than just the currency itself, we can send information and rules. Now with all of these ideas and these new technologies, many different entities are playing. We said private people, we said companies, we even didn't mention Facebook, okay? Because Facebook has also been playing with the idea of creating its own currency. Why not? There are a lot of benefits to creating this. But one of the biggest players that have been playing with this technological ability are governments from all over the world. At this moment, there's some sort of arm race that has to do with building new kinds of currencies, digital currencies. But do notice that when governments are building these digital currencies, they can have all the technology, but what do they not have? They could even have the trust, because we still would trust a digital euro. What would we not have if we're creating a centralized kind of currency created by a government? What have we just lost? What element have we lost from blockchain? The decentralization, the using of a lot of different counterparts that create the trust in this system, okay? And let's look at one example, okay? And where this can go, and we don't know if this is how it's going to continue because it's just a trial period right now. China has decided to become the world leader in blockchain technology in the next few years. And it's the first country in the world to actually roll out a digital currency that it has created, which is very interesting. But let's take a pause and see what happened in China when this happened. The Chinese government told people, you guys can get a prize of, let's say, $50 if you download the digital wallet that uses the digital yuan. So people downloaded the wallet, they got the $50, and then they wanted to start using it. And what did they find out? That in the program of that digital yuan, you cannot transfer those $50 to people that you know. Not only that, in the program of that digital currency, you can shop only at specific stores. And in that program, it's written what things you can buy with that currency. And you know what else is written in that program? That if you don't use it in a certain amount of time, it just disappears from your wallet. Okay? Now we don't know if this is how it's going to continue, how the digital yuan is going to continue behaving. Okay? This is just a trial period for it. But the idea behind this, and I'm getting to the end of my lecture, is that we need to remember that these solutions and digital currencies come with two things that regular currencies do not come with. One is the ability to track them, because every transaction is written, and it could be written on a database that is never, ever, ever deleted. Okay? Not only blockchain, but on any other kind of digital background. And the other thing is that this money can come with a program inside it, and a code, and a set of rules, which is different from the money that we know. And this kind of raises a lot of moral, ethical, and trust-related questions. Okay? Because one, if we're using a certain kind of currency, shouldn't we be aware what that set of rules is? Okay? What if it disappears after a few months? We need to know this before we try using this kind of currency. So where's the transparency in that, and where are we using that to build trust in the new kind of currencies that are being created? Second of all, the idea of using technology is not necessarily the thing that is going to give us the solution. It's the philosophy that stands behind it. Because if we take all of this wonderful philosophy of blockchain and we give it to the hands of one centralized entity, who says what the morals of this one centralized entity is? What if it's a regime? What if it uses it to keep track of what people are saying and doing and buying? What if it stops people from freedom of speech and freedom of purchasing and freedom of owning money? Okay? So the technology in itself is not necessarily the solution to creating trust and to creating something that is sustainable and morally and ethically something that we want as a humanity. The ideology behind it that says that many people should be involved together, and now we have the technology to do that, that's the idea. The idea is that all of the people that are in this decentralized society, they're the ones that should have the right to determine how this kind of new kind of money or new kind of solution should be used. And this is my last slide, I promise. So the question I think that we should all be looking at and addressing is that when we are looking at new technologies, we need to look at the moral and ethical and humanitarian points of view of it in order to really create trust. And I'll end with one last sentence, which I love ending my lectures with, which is said by Gordon Moore, who was one of the founders of Intel, and he said something very interesting. That change has never happened this fast before, and it will never be this slow again. And I thank you all for listening. Thank you.